The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Training Compound in Coronado, California. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez walked through the gates with her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, knowing that every eye was on her. She was about to become the first woman to attempt the grueling SEAL qualification course, and the whispers followed her like ocean waves. The men gathered around the training area fell silent as she approached. These were America's elite warriors, hardened by years of combat and forged in the fires of the world's most demanding military training. They had seen brothers fall during Hell Week, watched grown men cry and quit when the pressure became too much. In their minds, no woman could possibly survive what they had endured. Chief Petty Officer Mike Rodriguez, a veteran of 3 deployments, in Afghanistan, crossed his massive arms and shook his head. "This is a waste of everyone's time," he muttered to his teammates. "She'll be gone by the end of the first week." The others nodded in agreement. They had heard the rumors about the Pentagon's new initiative to open all combat roles to women, but seeing it in person felt different. Sarah had been preparing for this moment her entire military career. Growing up in a small Texas town, she had always been told that girls couldn't do certain things. Her father, a Marine veteran, had different ideas. He taught her to shoot, to fight, and most importantly, to never back down from a challenge. When she joined the Navy at 18, she quickly distinguished herself as an exceptional officer and athlete. Her path to this moment had been anything but easy. She had excelled in every previous assignment, from surface warfare to intelligence operations. Her commanding officers consistently rated her in the top 1% of all naval officers. She held records in multiple fitness categories and had completed Ranger School, making her one of only a handful of women to earn that distinction. The SEAL instructors watched her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Master Chief Thomas Williams, who had been running SEAL training for over 2 decades, had seen thousands of candidates come and go. He prided himself on being able to spot the ones who would quit within the first few hours. Something about Sarah's quiet confidence intrigued him, though he would never admit it to his staff. As she set down her gear in the barracks, Sarah could feel the weight of history on her shoulders. She knew that her success or failure would impact every woman who came after her. The media attention had been overwhelming, with reporters camping outside her apartment and following her every move. Military officials had briefed her extensively about the political implications of her attempt. The other candidates, all male, watched her with varying degrees of curiosity and resentment. Some saw her as a publicity stunt that would make their own achievement less meaningful. Others worried that standards would be lowered to accommodate her. A few simply didn't believe a woman belonged in their elite brotherhood. What none of them knew was the depth of Sarah's preparation. She had spent 2 years training specifically for this moment, working with former SEALs, studying every aspect of the curriculum, and pushing her body to limits she never thought possible. Her workout routine was legendary among her peers, and her mental preparation had been just as intense. The night before training began, she sat alone in her bunk writing in her journal. She thought about her younger sister, who had always looked up to her, and about all the young girls who might see her example and believe they could achieve anything. The pressure was immense, but it also fueled her determination. The SEAL training compound buzzed with nervous energy. Instructors made final preparations for what they knew would be a closely watched training cycle. The media had been banned from the facility, but everyone knew that word of Sarah's performance would leak out quickly. Pentagon officials had made it clear that this was a test case for the entire military. As Sarah prepared for sleep, she could hear the whispered conversations of her fellow candidates. Some expressed doubt about her abilities, while others wondered if they were about to witness history. What none of them realized was that the most challenging part of her journey wasn't the physical demands that lay ahead, but the psychological warfare that had already begun. The stage was set for a confrontation between tradition and progress, between those who believed in the status quo, and one woman who refused to accept limitations. In just a few hours, the bell would ring to begin the most demanding military training in the world, and Sarah Martinez would begin her quest to prove that courage and determination know no gender. The alarm clock shattered the pre-dawn silence at 04:30 hours. Sarah was already awake, having slept fitfully through her first night in the SEAL training barracks. Around her, 23 other candidates stirred from their bunks, beginning what would be the most challenging day of their military careers. The air was thick with tension and the smell of nervous sweat. Master Chief Williams stood at the front of the classroom, his weathered face showing no emotion as he surveyed the group of hopefuls. "Gentlemen," he began, then paused deliberately as his eyes landed on Sarah. "And lady, welcome to basic underwater demolition SEAL training. Look around this room. Statistics tell us that only 6 of you will be wearing the trident pin at the end of this journey." The first physical test came immediately after breakfast. The candidates lined up on the beach for the initial fitness assessment. Sarah positioned herself in the middle of the group, not wanting to draw attention by being either first or last. The Pacific Ocean waves crashed nearby, a constant reminder of the water-based challenges that lay ahead. Chief Rodriguez called out the first exercise, push-ups. "You have 2 minutes to complete the minimum 50 repetitions. Begin." Sarah dropped to the sand and began her count. Her months of preparation showed as she moved through the exercise with textbook form. While several of the men around her struggled to reach the minimum, she completed 78 perfect push-ups before time was called. The sit-ups test followed, then pull-ups, and finally the timed run. With each exercise, Sarah not only met the standards but exceeded them significantly. The instructors exchanged glances, their initial skepticism beginning to crack. They had expected her to struggle with the physical demands, but she was outperforming many of the male candidates. During the 4-mile beach run, Sarah found herself naturally settling into a pace near the front of the pack. The sand shifted under her feet, making each step more challenging than running on solid ground. Behind her, she could hear the heavy breathing and occasional cursing of candidates who were already struggling. The instructors followed in vehicles, shouting encouragement and insults in equal measure. One candidate, a former college football player named Jackson, had been particularly vocal about his doubts regarding Sarah's presence in the program. As they rounded the 2-mile marker, he was falling behind, his face red with exertion. Sarah maintained her steady pace, her breathing controlled despite the challenging conditions. The irony was not lost on the watching instructors. The afternoon brought the first water exercise, a basic swimming assessment that would preview the intense aquatic training to come. The candidates entered the frigid Pacific Ocean wearing only swim trunks and t-shirts. The water temperature was 58 degrees, cold enough to shock the system and cloud thinking. Sarah had prepared for this moment by training in similarly cold conditions. As they treaded water in the surf zone, waves crashed over their heads repeatedly. The instructors watched carefully for signs of panic or weakness. 3 candidates were pulled from the water within the first 15 minutes, their bodies unable to cope with the cold and the stress. Sarah remained calm and focused, using breathing techniques she had learned from former SEALs to maintain her core temperature. The psychological pressure was just as intense as the physical challenges. Throughout the day, instructors singled her out for additional scrutiny. "Martinez," Chief Rodriguez shouted during a rope climbing exercise, "show us what happens when the enemy is shooting at you and you need to get over that wall." The implication was clear. They were testing not just her ability, but her mental toughness under pressure. What surprised the instructors was Sarah's response to their psychological tactics. Instead of cracking under pressure, she seemed to thrive on the additional attention. Her performance actually improved when they increased the stress level. During a timed obstacle course run, she set the fastest time of the day after being called out for a do-over when an instructor claimed she hadn't properly completed one of the obstacles. The evening brought classroom instruction on maritime operations and small unit tactics. Sarah's intelligence background proved valuable as she quickly grasped complex operational concepts that left some of her classmates confused. Her questions were insightful and demonstrated a deep understanding of special operations principles that impressed even the most skeptical instructors. As the first day concluded, the instructors gathered for their daily debrief. Master Chief Williams reviewed the performance records with his staff. "She's not what we expected," admitted Chief Rodriguez, looking at Sarah's scores. "She's outperformed 60% of the class today." The other instructors nodded reluctantly, their preconceptions beginning to shift. That night in the barracks, the atmosphere among the candidates was subdued. Several men who had entered the program with supreme confidence were now questioning their own abilities after being outperformed by the woman they had dismissed. Jackson, the former football player, sat on his bunk staring at his hands, which were raw and bleeding from the rope climbing exercise. Sarah quietly tended to her own minor injuries, applying moleskin to prevent blisters and stretching her tired muscles. She could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, but she remained focused on preparation for the next day. She knew that this was only the beginning, and that much greater challenges lay ahead. The first day had ended with all candidates still in the program, but the instructors knew that would change quickly. The real test would come in the following weeks when sleep deprivation, cold exposure, and constant stress would break down even the strongest individuals. What they didn't yet realize was that Sarah Martinez possessed something that couldn't be measured in push-ups or run times, an unshakable determination that would carry her through challenges that had broken countless men before her. Week 3 brought the dreaded Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training with less than 4 hours of sleep total. The bell that signified quitting rang constantly as candidates reached their breaking point. By Monday evening, the original class of 24 had shrunk to 15. Sarah remained, but the real test was just beginning. The instructors had designed Hell Week to push human beings beyond their perceived limits. Candidates would be subjected to surf torture, where they lay in the freezing ocean surf for hours while waves crashed over them. They would carry heavy boats on their heads across miles of beach sand. They would perform endless calisthenics until their muscles screamed for mercy. Most importantly, they would discover what they were truly made of when everything seemed impossible. Sarah's first real moment of doubt came during a midnight exercise called Steel Pier. The day, candidates were required to stay in the ocean with their clothes on for over an hour, linking arms to prevent anyone from being swept away by the current. The water temperature was 54 degrees and hypothermia was a constant threat. Several candidates had already been pulled from the water by medical personnel. As Sarah stood in the churning black water, her body began to shut down from the cold. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably, and she could no longer feel her hands or feet. The candidate next to her, a tough Marine named Stevens, was shaking so violently that he could barely stand. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered through blue lips. "I'm wringing out." Something inside Sarah refused to accept defeat. She began talking to Stevens, sharing stories from her childhood, anything to keep both of their minds off the cold. She told him about her father's lessons on perseverance, about the time she had completed a marathon with a stress fracture in her foot. Her voice became an anchor for not just Stevens but several other candidates who were on the verge of quitting. Chief Rodriguez watched from the pier, impressed despite himself. He had seen many candidates try to help their teammates, but Sarah's natural leadership was different. She wasn't just enduring the pain, she was actively helping others endure it too. When the exercise finally ended, Stevens was still in the program. He would later credit Sarah with saving his SEAL career. The next challenge came during log PT, where teams of 6 candidates had to perform exercise as well, carrying a massive telephone pole weighing over 200 pounds. Sarah's team included 2 candidates who were struggling physically, making the already difficult exercise nearly impossible. The instructors deliberately assigned weaker candidates to her team, wanting to see how she would respond. Instead of showing frustration with her teammates, Sarah adapted her strategy. She positioned herself to carry more of the log's weight and used her voice to coordinate the team's movements. When one candidate, Wilson, began to falter during overhead presses, Sarah shifted her position to support his section of the log. "We're all getting through this together," she told her team during a brief rest. "No one gets left behind." The instructors were taking notice. Master Chief Williams pulled Chief Rodriguez aside during a break. "She's not just surviving," he observed. "She's making everyone around her better. That's something you can't teach." Rodriguez nodded, remembering his own Hell Week 20 years earlier, when a teammate's encouragement had kept him from ringing the bell. Wednesday night brought the dreaded around-the-world exercise, a continuous series of evolutions that lasted 18 hours without break. Candidates would run miles of beach, perform hundreds of push-ups and sit-ups, carry boats through the surf, and then do it all again. By this point, hallucinations were common, and several candidates had been medically withdrawn. Sarah's lowest moment came during hour 14 of the evolution. She was carrying a boat with 5 teammates when her legs simply gave out. She collapsed in the sand, her body finally rebelling after days of abuse. For a moment, she lay there considering how easy it would be to simply ring the bell and end the suffering. The instructors watched closely, waiting to see if she would quit. Instead, she forced herself to her feet and rejoined her boat crew. Her teammates, who had initially resented her presence, now rallied around her. Stevens, the same man she had helped through Steel Pier, took some of her load without being asked. "Your turn to lean on us," he said simply. The bond between them had transcended gender. They were now simply warriors helping fellow warriors survive. The night brought unexpected challenges beyond physical exhaustion. During a navigation exercise in complete darkness, Sarah's team became lost in the coastal marshlands. Cold, wet, and disoriented, several candidates wanted to signal for help. Sarah instead used her intelligence training to carefully analyze their situation and determine their location using natural landmarks and sound cues from nearby traffic. Her navigation skills not only got her team back on course but potentially saved them from elimination. Teams that failed to complete the exercise faced additional punishment that could have broken already exhausted candidates. Once again, Sarah's performance elevated not just herself but everyone around her. By Thursday morning, only 11 candidates remained from the original 24. The instructor's attitude toward Sarah had noticeably shifted. They still pushed her relentlessly, but now it seemed less about breaking her and more about forging her into the warrior they were, beginning to believe she could become. The final test of Hell Week was Surf Passage, where boat crews had to navigate their craft through enormous ocean swells while exhausted and hypothermic. Sarah's crew worked together like a machine, their earlier struggles creating an unbreakable bond. As they successfully completed the exercise, Chief Rodriguez could be heard telling another instructor, "That woman has what it takes." Friday afternoon brought the end of Hell Week. The 11 surviving candidates stood on the beach, exhausted but victorious. Sarah looked around at her remaining classmates, men who had started the week doubting her ability and ended it respecting her as a peer. She had not just survived Hell Week, she had helped others survive it too. As they were dismissed for their first real sleep in nearly a week, Master Chief Williams approached Sarah privately. "You've surprised a lot of people this week, Martinez," he said quietly. "But the real test is just beginning. Hell Week weeds out the weak. The rest of training builds the strong. We'll see what you're really made of in the weeks ahead." Sarah nodded, too exhausted to speak but understanding the message. She had proven she belonged, but now she had to prove she could excel. The SEAL instructors no longer doubted her heart or her determination. The question now was whether she possessed the technical skills and tactical acumen to become not just a SEAL, but an exceptional one. The weeks following Hell Week brought a different kind of challenge. The surviving 11 candidates entered the technical phases of training, where physical toughness alone was not enough. They would learn combat diving, demolitions, land warfare, and the precise tactical skills that separated SEALs from other elite units. For Sarah, this phase would prove whether she could master the complex skills that made SEALs the world's premier special operations force. Combat diving presented the first major technical hurdle. The candidates learned to use closed-circuit breathing systems that left no bubbles, allowing for covert underwater operations. The equipment was complex and unforgiving. Mistakes could be fatal. During pool training, Sarah watched carefully as instructors demonstrated procedures that required absolute precision. Her first major diving test was pool competency, where instructors would sabotage her breathing equipment underwater while she was blindfolded. She had to identify and fix multiple problems while maintaining her composure in what was essentially a controlled drowning exercise. Many candidates failed this test multiple times before passing. When Sarah entered the pool for her first attempt, Chief Rodriguez deliberately created more problems with her equipment than usual. He wanted to see if the stress would break her newfound confidence. Underwater and blind, Sarah methodically worked through each emergency procedure she had been taught. When an instructor yanked her mask off and tangled her air hoses, she remained calm and solved each problem systematically. She emerged from the pool having passed on her first attempt, something only 2 other candidates had achieved. Her methodical approach and ability to think clearly under extreme stress impressed even the most skeptical diving instructors. "She processes information differently than most candidates," one instructor noted. "She doesn't panic. She problem solves." Land warfare training revealed another strength Sarah brought to the program. Her intelligence background had given her extensive experience with weapons and tactics, but SEAL training took these skills to an entirely different level. The candidates learned advanced marksmanship, close quarters combat, and small unit tactics in realistic scenarios designed to simulate actual combat conditions. During a live fire exercise at the shooting range, Sarah demonstrated exceptional accuracy with multiple weapon systems. Her shooting scores consistently ranked in the top 3 of the class. But more importantly, she showed an intuitive understanding of how different weapons should be employed in various tactical situations. Her questions during instruction revealed a deep grasp of combat principles that surprised her instructors. The demolitions phase of training tested each candidate's ability to work with dangerous explosives under pressure. Sarah's analytical mind proved perfectly suited to the precise calculations required for effective demolitions work. While other candidates struggled with the mathematical formulas needed to determine proper charge placement, Sarah excelled at quickly calculating the exact amount of explosives needed for different targets. During a practical exercise where candidates had to destroy a simulated enemy bunker, Sarah's charge placement was so precise that instructors used her work as an example for future classes. Her ability to visualize how explosions would affect different materials and structures demonstrated a natural talent that couldn't be taught. However, it was during small unit tactics training that Sarah truly distinguished herself. The candidates were divided into fire teams and given complex scenarios requiring coordination, leadership, and split-second decision-making. Sarah found herself naturally filling leadership roles, even when she wasn't formally designated as team leader. One particularly challenging exercise simulated a hostage rescue mission. Sarah's team had to infiltrate a building, neutralize several armed opponents, and extract a hostage without civilian casualties. The scenario was designed to test not just tactical skills but decision-making under pressure. Multiple teams had failed the exercise throughout the day. Sarah analyzed the situation differently than previous teams. Instead of the standard frontal approach, she identified a weakness in the building's structure that allowed for a more creative entry method. Her team used climbing techniques learned during Hell Week to access the building from an unexpected angle, catching the role-playing instructors completely off guard. The execution was flawless. Sarah's team neutralized all threats, secured the hostage, and exited the building in record time with 0 civilian casualties. The instructors were so impressed with her tactical innovation that they modified the exercise to prevent future teams from using the same approach. Master Chief Williams made a note in Sarah's file. Exceptional tactical acumen, natural leader. Not everything came easily for Sarah. Combat swimming in open ocean with heavy equipment proved extremely challenging. The physical demands of swimming long distances while carrying weapons and explosives pushed even her well-conditioned body to its limits. During one exercise, she struggled to keep pace with her teammates and fell behind during a crucial infiltration simulation. Chief Rodriguez, who had become one of Sarah's most demanding critics, pulled her aside after the failed exercise. "Swimming has always been the great equalizer here," he told her bluntly. "You can't think your way through exhaustion in the water. You have to dig deeper than you've ever dug before." That night, Sarah stayed after regular training hours to work on her swimming technique with Stevens, who had become not just a teammate, but a close friend. Together, they analyzed her stroke mechanics and developed a more efficient technique that would conserve energy during long swims. The extra effort paid off during the next evaluation, where she successfully completed the demanding swim within the required time. The psychological pressure continued to intensify as the program progressed. Instructors constantly reminded the candidates that they were being evaluated, not just on individual performance, but on their potential as team members in actual combat operations. Sarah felt the weight of representing all women who might follow in her footsteps, but she also understood that earning her teammates' respect required focusing solely on being the best SEAL she could be. Her breakthrough moment came during a night navigation exercise in the mountains. Teams were given GPS coordinates and had to reach multiple checkpoints using only basic navigation tools while carrying full combat loads. The terrain was treacherous and several teams became lost in the darkness. Sarah's team was making good progress when they encountered another team that had become completely disoriented. The team leader was experiencing what appeared to be a panic attack, and his teammates were arguing about which direction to go. Standard protocol would have been for Sarah's team to continue their mission without offering assistance. Instead, Sarah made a command decision to help. She quickly assessed the lost team's position and realized they were heading directly toward a dangerous cliff area. Using her navigation skills, she guided both teams safely to their next checkpoint, potentially preventing serious injuries. Her decision to help other candidates, even at potential cost to her own mission, demonstrated the kind of character the instructors wanted to see in future SEALs. By the end of the land warfare phase, 8 candidates remained from the original 24. Sarah had not just survived but emerged as one of the top performers in the class. Her combination of physical toughness, technical skill, and natural leadership had transformed the initial skepticism of her instructors into genuine respect. The final phase of training lay ahead, and everyone knew it would determine who would earn the right to wear the SEAL trident. For Sarah, the journey had already exceeded her expectations, but she understood that the most challenging tests were yet to come. The final phase of SEAL training brought Sarah to San Clemente Island, a remote military installation off the California coast, where the 8 remaining candidates would face their ultimate test. This phase, known as the Island, would determine who possessed not just the skills but the judgment and character to become a Navy SEAL. The exercises were designed to simulate real combat conditions with live ammunition, actual explosives, and scenarios based on recent military operations. Sarah stood on the dock as the military transport boat approached the island's harbor. Around her, the 7 other candidates checked their equipment one final time. Stevens, her longtime teammate, gave her a confident nod. Wilson, whom she had helped through numerous challenges, quietly thanked her again for never giving up on him. The group that had once viewed her with suspicion had become a tight-knit unit that genuinely respected each other. Master Chief Williams briefed them as the island came into view. "Gentlemen and lady, this is where we separate the SEALs from everyone else. You've proven you can handle the physical demands and learn the technical skills. Now we find out if you can apply everything you've learned under conditions that mirror actual combat operations." The first major exercise was a complex amphibious assault simulation. The candidates had to infiltrate the island by swimming several miles in full combat gear, establish a beachhead, and then coordinate with supporting units to capture a series of objectives. Real explosives would be used, and live ammunition would be fired over their heads to create authentic stress conditions. Sarah's team was assigned the most difficult landing zone, a rocky coastline with strong currents and limited cover. As they swam toward shore in the pre-dawn darkness, Sarah found herself fighting against a current that threatened to push them off course. The weight of her equipment made each stroke exhausting, but she maintained her position in the formation through sheer determination. The swim took over 3 hours, longer than any previous water exercise. By the time they reached the beach, 2 candidates from other teams had been pulled from the water by safety personnel, their bodies unable to continue. Sarah emerged from the surf exhausted but focused, immediately taking cover and establishing security, while her teammates caught their breath. The assault phase required precise coordination between teams approaching from different directions. Sarah found herself in a leadership role, coordinating radio communications between separated units while simultaneously leading her team toward their objective. The scenario was chaotic, with explosions, gunfire, and smoke creating realistic combat conditions. Her moment of truth came when her team's radio failed during the middle of the assault. Without communication with the other units, they risked friendly fire incidents or mission failure. Sarah made a tactical decision to send one teammate back to reestablish communication while she led the remaining 2 toward their objective using hand signals and predetermined timing. The plan worked perfectly. Her team captured their objective exactly on schedule, allowing the overall mission to succeed. The instructors later noted that her decision-making under pressure had prevented what could have been a complete mission failure. Chief Rodriguez, watching from the command post, shook his head in amazement. "She's not just keeping up," he told Master Chief Williams. "She's excelling." The psychological pressure intensified during the final weeks. Instructors created scenarios designed to test each candidate's judgment under extreme stress. One exercise simulated a hostage rescue where Sarah had to decide whether to take a difficult shot that could save hostages but risked civilian casualties. Another tested her ability to make command decisions when given incomplete information and conflicting orders. Sarah's intelligence background proved invaluable during these exercises. Her experience analyzing complex situations and making decisions based on limited information gave her an advantage that even some physically stronger candidates lacked. She consistently demonstrated the kind of mature judgment that instructors looked for in potential SEAL leaders. The most challenging test came during a 72-hour continuous operation that combined all elements of their training. Teams had to conduct multiple missions with minimal rest, including underwater demolitions, land warfare, and maritime operations. The exercise was designed to push candidates beyond exhaustion, to see how they performed when their bodies and minds were at their limits. By the second day, Sarah was operating on less than 4 hours of sleep over 48 hours. During a night reconnaissance mission, she began experiencing mild hallucinations, a common effect of extreme sleep deprivation. Instead of fighting the symptoms or trying to hide them, she developed coping strategies to maintain her effectiveness despite the altered mental state. When her team leader, Jackson, the former football player who had initially doubted her, began making poor decisions due to exhaustion, Sarah tactfully suggested alternative approaches that kept the team on mission. Her ability to remain mentally sharp even while physically depleted impressed instructors who had seen many candidates collapse under similar conditions. The final test was intensely personal. Each candidate faced a one-on-one evaluation with Master Chief Williams, designed to assess their character and motivation. Sarah entered the small office knowing that this conversation could determine whether months of suffering and achievement would result in earning her Trident pin. "Martinez," Williams began, "you've surprised everyone here, myself included. But I need to know, are you doing this to prove a point about women in combat, or are you here because you want to be a SEAL?" His question cut directly to the heart of her motivation and the broader political implications of her presence in the program. Sarah's response was immediate and honest. "Master Chief, I started this journey wanting to prove something to everyone who said women couldn't do it. But somewhere along the way that changed. I'm here because I love being challenged. I love working with exceptional people, and I believe I can contribute to the mission. The fact that I'm a woman is just biology. Everything else is about who I choose to be." Williams studied her face for a long moment, then made a note in her file. "That's the answer of someone who belongs here," he said simply. The final exercise was an individual test where each candidate had to complete a solo mission demonstrating all the skills they had learned. Sarah was assigned to conduct a reconnaissance of a heavily defended position, and then execute a precision demolition attack. She had to swim to shore alone, infiltrate the target area undetected, gather intelligence, place explosives, and extract safely. Everything went according to plan until the extraction phase. As Sarah swam away from the target area after successfully completing her demolition, she encountered a fellow candidate floating unconscious in the water. Wilson had apparently suffered equipment failure during his own mission and was in real danger of drowning. Without hesitation, Sarah abandoned her own extraction route to rescue Wilson. She managed to get him to shore and performed CPR until medical personnel arrived. Her actions saved Wilson's life but technically constituted a mission failure since she had deviated from her assigned plan. The instructors faced a difficult decision. Sarah had demonstrated exactly the kind of character they wanted in a SEAL, by risking her own success to save a teammate's life. However, she had also failed to complete her assigned mission parameters. After intense debate, they concluded that her actions exemplified the SEAL ethos of never leaving a teammate behind. As the final training phase concluded, 7 candidates remained from the original 24. Sarah had not only survived, but had emerged as one of the most respected members of her class. Her journey from skeptical outsider to trusted teammate was complete. But the ultimate test still lay ahead, the graduation ceremony where she would either receive her Trident pin or face the reality that even exceptional performance might not be enough to break through the final barriers. Graduation day arrived with unexpected controversy. 3 days before the ceremony, a group of senior SEAL officers had requested a review of Sarah's qualification, questioning whether standards had been maintained throughout her training. The request came not from her instructors who had recommended her for graduation, but from Pentagon officials concerned about the political implications of graduating the first female SEAL. Sarah sat in a small conference room facing a panel of 5 senior officers, including 2 admirals who would make the final decision about her graduation. Her training records were spread across the table, documenting months of exceptional performance, but she understood that politics might override merit in this final evaluation. Admiral Richardson, a veteran of multiple deployments and former SEAL himself, led the questioning. Lieutenant Commander Martinez, your performance has been exemplary by all technical measures. However, some have raised concerns about unit cohesion and the potential impact of your presence on existing SEAL teams. How do you respond to those concerns? Sarah had prepared for this moment, but the weight of the question still struck her deeply. Admiral, I understand the concerns about change and tradition, but I've learned something important during this training. Excellence creates its own cohesion. My classmates didn't accept me because I'm a woman. They accepted me because I earned my place beside them through performance and character. The questioning continued for over 2 hours. The panel examined every aspect of her training, looking for any evidence that standards had been lowered or that her success had come at the expense of program integrity. Sarah answered each question directly and honestly, letting her record speak for itself. Master Chief Williams was called to testify about Sarah's performance. His words carried enormous weight given his reputation and experience. Admirals, in 22 years of running SEAL training, I've seen thousands of candidates come through this program. Lieutenant Commander Martinez ranks in the top 5% of all graduates I've evaluated. Her performance wasn't just adequate, it was exceptional. Chief Rodriguez, who had been Sarah's harshest critic early in training, provided equally strong support. She made everyone around her better. That's not something you can fake or train for. It's character, and it's exactly what we want in a SEAL. The panel also heard from Sarah's classmates who provided unanimous support for her graduation. Stephen spoke eloquently about how her leadership had kept him in the program during his darkest moments. Wilson credited her with saving his life, both during training and during the final exercise. Even Jackson, who had initially opposed her presence, testified that she had earned his complete respect and trust. Behind the scenes, a more significant battle was taking place. Senior military leaders were split on the implications of graduating Sarah. Some saw it as a necessary step toward full integration of women into special operations. Others worried about the impact on recruiting and the reaction from current SEAL teams. The decision ultimately came down to a simple principle. Had Sarah met the same standards as every other SEAL graduate? The training records provided an unambiguous answer. She had not only met every standard, but had exceeded most of them. Her scores ranked her second in her graduating class overall, and first in several individual categories. After 3 days of deliberation, Admiral Richardson called Sarah back to deliver the decision. She entered the conference room knowing that her entire future, and possibly the future of women in special operations, hung in the balance. The Admiral's expression revealed nothing about the panel's conclusion. Lieutenant Commander Martinez, he began formally, this panel has completed its review of your training record and performance evaluations. After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony, we have reached a unanimous decision. Sarah held her breath, preparing for either vindication or devastating disappointment. You have not only met but exceeded the standards required of every Navy SEAL. Your graduation is approved, and you will receive your Trident pin with the rest of your class. Congratulations and welcome to the Brotherhood. The room erupted in applause from the instructors and officials who had supported her throughout the process. The graduation ceremony took place on a perfect California morning. Sarah stood with her 6 classmates as Admiral Richardson addressed the gathered crowd of families, friends, and media representatives. The ceremony had drawn national attention, with news crews documenting what many considered a historic moment. Today we pin the Trident on 7 exceptional warriors, the Admiral announced. Each has demonstrated the courage, skill, and character that defines the Navy SEALs. They have earned their place in the most elite fighting force in the world through merit alone. When Admiral Richardson reached Sarah, the crowd fell silent. He looked directly into her eyes as he pinned the golden trident to her uniform. You've proven that excellence knows no gender, he said quietly so only she could hear. Now go show the world what a SEAL can do. As Sarah stood with her new trident pin gleaming on her uniform, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The physical pain of Hell Week, the technical challenges of diving and demolitions training, the psychological pressure of constantly proving herself, all of it had forged her into something stronger than she had ever imagined possible. The media attention was intense, with reporters eager to capture the historic moment, but Sarah's focus remained on her classmates, the men who had started as skeptics and ended as brothers. They had proven that the bonds forged in shared suffering transcended any differences in background or gender. Chief Rodriguez approached Sarah after the ceremony, extending his hand with genuine warmth. "I owe you an apology, Martinez. I thought you were here to make a statement. Instead, you made yourself into one hell of a SEAL." His words meant more to Sarah than any of the media coverage or political praise she would receive. Master Chief Williams had his own message for Sarah. As the ceremony concluded, "This is just the beginning," he told her. "You've earned the right to wear the trident, but now you have to prove you deserve to keep it. Your real test starts when you join an operational team." 6 months later, Sarah deployed with SEAL Team 7 to Afghanistan, where she participated in dozens of combat missions. Her teammates, initially skeptical about having a female SEAL in their unit, quickly learned to trust and respect her abilities. Her intelligence background proved invaluable in complex operations, and her leadership skills helped make her team one of the most effective in the theater. The young girl who had been told that girls couldn't do certain things had grown into a warrior who proved that courage and determination recognized no boundaries. Sarah Martinez had not just broken barriers. She had shown that excellence has no gender, and that the only limits that truly matter are the ones we place on ourselves. Her success opened doors for other women who followed. But perhaps more importantly, it demonstrated that when standards are maintained and merit is the only measure, extraordinary people can achieve extraordinary things regardless of what others say is possible. The SEALs had said no one like her could stop them from maintaining their exclusive brotherhood. Instead, she had shown them that someone like her could make them even stronger.